All right, so here are my trades for today, Thursday. Um, let's go over MU first. Okay, so here's my first trade on MU. Here's the daily. There was earnings yesterday, so today was a second day play. Yesterday it had, I think overall really good earnings and good guidance, but it sold off all day. So you can see it gapped up pretty high and even ripped up near the open and then came back to the opening price and then sold off the rest of the day pretty strongly, closing near the bottom 10 percentile of the day. So pretty weak. And then today price gaps down. And so basically what I was playing here was I guess you can call it a range resistance, even though it's more like a breakout, a breakdown out of this 2-day range, and then I'm playing the retest. So basically, price opens, comes up, does like that falling angel, or excuse me, rising devil, hits the bottom of these 2 days, sees resistance, and then I short it back down, maybe get the continuation. But there's a couple things that I don't necessarily love about this setup and why I don't think it's right now an A+ setup. And that's number one, this move. I mean, the ATR of this is barely $4, and this thing moved, $7 or more yesterday. So it does feel like it's not going to have as much juice to keep going and get that continuation. And the other thing was a lot of the stocks were selling off at the open and the markets were selling off. They were more weak at the open, whereas MU wasn't. So that was a little, that told me a little bit that, okay, even though MU is gap down and weak and I'm playing the weak short here, it's moving up while everything is selling down. I felt like the selling was eventually going to turn MU around and push it down. It wasn't going to be able to go up forever. And so I felt like, okay, if it can come up here, hit this area, and then the selling on everything else continues, that's when it's really going to start its dissension from there. But you'll see here when we look at the 1 minute. Here was price opened. It did sell off really quickly for a minute there. And then here's your kind of rising devil where it moves up about half an ATR, in 10 minutes there. Its ATR was about $4, moves up about $2. And you can see all the daily levels here. These are the last 2 daily lows. So a lot of, support becoming resistance here. And so what I waited for was some kind of signal up here. And not only do I get some wicks here, I get just a nice little like 5-minute low. Generally these candles try to hold above there, hit these daily levels, and then make a new 5-minute low, and then I get short. Now my stop was up here, which I think is pretty wide. I do think that my stop could have been cut in half to here, but I think that has to do with me trading about only 10 minutes into the open, and then the other things that made me not as confident, which because of that I'm okay with. So and the thing is like, okay, if price hadn't gone down just yet and it had pulled back some more, would I really have been okay with it coming up here and doing a bit of a double top and then coming back down? Would I have been okay with holding my stop? Would I have believed in that spot there? And I'm not sure actually. So because of those other things, like market selling off, however, MU is going up, So really I'm thinking, well, the market's selling off, but eventually the market's going to do some kind of pullback or bounce. And when that happens, if this goes down and then starts going up with the market, well, maybe it is stronger than, and it's kind of reverting back to the mean and the other and back into the daily range. So really I'm kind of happy with where I put my stop, and I probably would have moved it in closer had we started to come up a little bit. I'm not sure. So overall, that's why it's not really an A+ setup for me, but it did happen to work out. didn't make a ton of R's on it because of the wide stop and because it didn't keep moving. But I only took off 10% here, and I took off 3/4 of it here, actually maybe half of it here, and then a majority of it here, and just left a little bit on to maybe add in. But it basically low of day was as far as it went. And when I looked at the 15-minute chart, 77 whole dollar, you look back and that was the low of 3 days ago. So basically the last 1, 2, 3 days were all, those levels were all the most freshest and most important. And I used the last 2 days to short, and then the third day, which is the next best level, it did bounce there, and I could see it holding here. So I took off some here, was hoping it'd keep going, and I'd see a breakdown through 77 with new volume. You could see here it got through it and then immediately back up, even came back, retested, did a nice little sort of reversal look here, sort of a little mini head and shoulders. Clearly this 77 was a really good long, or a good support. And then I got out of most here, and from here I was way more thinking this was not going to do what I thought it was going to do, which is the bigger move. Now, if it had come up to here, VWAP area, maybe the 78 and these daily levels, and eventually turned around, then that would have made me feel better. But I think the higher it went above all these things and the longer it was up here, the more I was like, I'm not going to fight this much more. And I'm glad I didn't, because, I wasn't necessarily super confident from the beginning. And then it gave a good long from there, but it only went into yesterday's range part of the way and sort of was indecisive. So I don't think MU is necessarily the best day trading stock anyway, so I'm perfectly fine with how I did that. Okay, so let's go to AMD, which was my decent trade of mine. Okay, before I get to AMD, let's start with NVIDIA, because I did trade total of 3 stocks, MU, NVIDIA, and then AMD. AMD I was successful, but NVIDIA I wasn't, and I actually don't like it. And this is part of my, what I'm working on, is sort of getting away from these kinds of trades. Basically trades that I truly don't vet out enough and think about from all time frames, and trades that I jump in using more of just the 1 minute, the recent levels, seeing little baby patterns, and then sort of thinking like I'm seeing something happening on the tape, which when I don't combine the big levels, a lot of times that tape action is incorrect for me, especially as it gets closer to 11 a.m. As it gets closer to 11 a.m., the tape action for me is just very inconsistent, and I think that's because that's lowering volume, more algos, and that's where I've got way too many times. So a couple things I learned though today, which is I'm really getting good at looking at the basket of stocks. Now when I'm looking at what the SPY is doing, what the Qs are doing, what the market is doing, I don't just look at those ETFs. I look at all of the big stocks, and I kind of put a big picture together. I look at Apple, I look at Microsoft, I look at Tesla, NVIDIA, but I also look at which one of those has the higher RVOL, because a lot of times if Tesla or Apple has higher RVOL, say they're over 100 or even 95%, whereas the other ones are more like 50% and 60% and less, well, then I'll put a little more emphasis on Apple and Tesla, and then I'll break down their levels. And if I get a really good level that I understand, well, then I'll put more weight on Tesla being at a really strong level, whether it's rejecting it or breaking out, and then I'll connect that with the market. So I'll say, okay, the market looks like this. Tesla is also doing this. So I combine them, and I sort of say it's a little bit more skewed this way or that way based on all of them. Today, the 2 stocks that were more in play in terms of RVOL was NVIDIA and AMD. AMD obviously was the weakest, and was weak through a lot of the day, whereas NVIDIA actually had higher RVOL but was moving up. So like Tyler and I were talking about trying to get long on AMD, when really AMD was weak and kept looking weak. We just knew that AMD was giving a really good risk reward in terms of, well, it's sold off so much, it has so much potential for a pullback or a move back up. However, looking at things, we really should be trying to go long on something that wants to overall go long. And so like for NVIDIA, right around this 1015 area, this is where, I noticed the RVOL was strong and it was breaking high of day. Other stocks were more weaker at this point, I believe. However, NVIDIA was moving up with decent RVOL. So to me, this is sort of the stock that we want to get long at. Sure, it's maybe not as low as AMD and you don't have the potential, but and maybe this isn't the best example of where to go long on NVIDIA, but that just says how, noticing that NVIDIA is the leader right now is a bit stronger. This is more likely to go up until it hits some kind of resistance. And so, but that's not what I did. I tried to short it twice here, and mainly because I was just impatient here. So you look at the 15-minute, and I really just don't even like the 15-minute. I mean, when I zoom out, I sort of made a trend line here. Like, sure, it's trending down, but I really don't think this trend line was that good. It wasn't even touching some of this stuff. And then I guess so really it's just not a thought out trade. And I guess when I was looking at it here, I thought, okay, it is strong, but maybe it topped out here. Everything's sort of weaker. I think this thing is going to pull back to VWAP. So I sort of looked at this as a swing high or a lower high, and I was shorting that for the flush down to here. And it was really just going to be that kind of trade. And that's just, I mean, that's okay, but that's not what I'm trying to get. And the higher time frame didn't really support this. So so I tried it here, saw it bounce and hold, saw a lot of like buyers really holding it up here, and then I got out about at break even. So, and I left it alone, and I'm glad I did. So I don't know, this is the stuff that I really want to start taking out of my trading, and stick with the the bigger picture down to the smaller picture. Everything is supporting the idea rather than just thinking I'm seeing a few things and then going for the trade. Okay, so AMD. And AMD isn't necessarily an A+ setup for me. However, I do think it's like a B setup, something I've done quite a bit and I have experience with. Okay, so AMD super weak. Had the downgrade today. It had the selling yesterday, and this wasn't too overextended on the selling like MU was. Like you could get more selling continuation with AMD here because you can see the potential moves that it's had in the past. So it can have some really big moves, and I know that. And AMD can be a really good moving stock, even though it did gap down. So you would think that maybe we'd get some kind of pullback at some point in the day. But I think the fact that it didn't do it at all just showed how weak it was, and that's what led me to continue to short it even halfway down for this second half of the move. So I didn't really have necessarily any good levels going on with this for my particular trade. I used some fresh levels that it created on the 1 minute chart. However, when I did short it and got into it successfully, I did have 110 as my main target because I remember 110 being a really big level back in the day. I think it was maybe this month. 110 was huge. Maybe it was over here. I don't quite remember, but psychological level 110, and I think it was a little more than an ATR. So everything kind of fit that mold to be a really good target, and it worked out. Okay, so when I zoom down on the 15-minute, and okay, so let's just go to the 1 minute here. So here was AMD at the open, right? So here's a normal ATR for it. Okay. So we get down here. There was a big bid at 113. It breaks through it, gets back above, and this is where we're starting to think, okay, maybe this thing can turn around and sort of revert back to the mean and go long. So it gets above VWAP, sort of breaks this previous high here, can't do it very long, comes back down. 113 bid is there again. Okay, so it's here. I'm not sure if it gets hit or if it just gets partially filled, but it holds it. Comes down again. I don't even think it filled any of it, but clearly new buyers showed up right there. Boom, it took off and sort of felt like some new volume was coming in here. Okay, maybe that's the lowest it's going to go from here. It gets above VWAP. Felt like maybe it was flagging. I was going with the assumption that it was flagging and volume was going to continue. You can see here volume did die, and then that flag failed, and I was quick to get out because I did feel like this thing looked really weak. Things that I liked that looked really weak was the VWAP, super sloped, and it just looked extremely weak right off the open. No retest. And so, okay, so that 113 bid is still there. Price fails to hold VWAP again, comes down, this time hits 113 again and comes back down. That to me right there is like, it's weak from here. So it's a short. How can I get in it? And I felt like this 113 was the perfect level to get short. Like I said, that bid came back, couldn't it was holding it, support, then broke, then retested. And shortly after has already continued. So it's like these, it didn't take it very long to come back down and hit this 113. I thought that this might happen later in the afternoon, but nope, it happened by 11 a.m. and it was off and running. So I just felt like the quickness and how fast it got down here and wanted to continue told me how weak it was. So I got short right here for a sort of a momentum, a little bit of a scalp entry. We needed it to work right away. And my stop was just above up here. And I took off 25% here and I moved my stop to break even, but man, I was so close to just moving it right above here again because this was the level I wanted to hide behind. And this is where I feel like, if we know what we're doing, we love the level. This is just an error in my trade management. There's no reason why price should stop right where I entered. This entered level has nothing to do with this level. It's close to it, but this is the level 113, and then this is the high where it retested. That's anything above that is where things change, and it might not be as weak at this point. So that's where I feel like that. I don't know why I really moved my stop to break even. That was just me being scared. But normally I would take a partial like that, whether it's 10%, 25%, whatever, because I did get in pretty tight. And then a retest is totally fine. Keep it up here, hope that it comes up, and then pretty quickly fails again and then continues. And that's what it did. And you can see it just barely stopped me out at break even. So I was bummed about that. Didn't want to chase it, but I really did like this new low of day, 112.40. Felt like it was I could see it sort of holding. It broke down, was then retesting multiple times and made this nice consolidation. I've seen these recently where you just have a super weak stock and it just it can barely pull back in a retest. Instead of retesting, it just makes a really nice consolidation. And you then have an entry level right here, this 112.40. So I almost got in right here, So I'll come up again, got short, of course, and it went a little bit higher. And then I realized, oh shit, that's the 112.50, the $0.50. So I got out, but then I told myself if it comes right back under 40 cents again, I'm just going to keep my stop above the 50 cent mark. And I'm going to get in right here at the 40. And that's exactly what happened. And that worked out. So got in it, tiny partial just to pay myself. And then I put in range orders to really get the big long move. Put one at 111, and then the big one was at 110, which I did mess up and came back to the computer early, saw it bounce at 110.50, which was impatient of me to think that, there was no reason to get out, nothing special. This was just a pure hitting a $0.50, healthy pullback, and then it didn't take it very long to come down and hit 105. I literally would have hit it like 5 minutes later. And that was the big amount left. So missed about 60 cents there, which 60 cents was a lot for how tight I was risking here. So that was a bit of a bummer, but you know what? That I was done for the day. I made enough green today, and then I just watched it, and it didn't go much lower than 110. I tried 109, and then that was the low of the day. So to me, this was just a really weak trending stock down, and I didn't really need to use any higher time frame levels, um, at least at this point. What I used was seeing the very weak and downtrending VWAP, um, using the ATR to tell me how much further it could continue to trend, using the RVOL, which is over 150%. So that told me it could easily get to 1 ATR and maybe more. I combined that with that really good 110 level I remembered. That gave me a really good target of 1 ATR / 110. That combines to be a really good target down here, a good zone. And then seeing the tape in that 113 level really holding and then breaking. And if we see a nice level and it breaks and it retests, that's a really good entry point. So yeah, it's not something I'm going to risk a ton on, because it is a little bit more momentum and scalpy. But if I can fight for that price and get in tight and pay myself a little quicker and then hold that core, then this is exactly how I treat it. I pay myself a little bit and then I put in those range orders and sort of walk away and let it do its thing throughout the day.